Hi, Tonya. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, Julie. It's great to be here.
Yes, thanks so much for being here. I always love when I get to introduce to the listeners and also get to interview another EquiLife coach, because even though we all get to meet and we do feel like we know each other, I always end up learning more when I get to have one of you on the podcast. So I'm thrilled for our conversation. What I would love to do to start is, could you share with our listeners a little bit about what you're currently doing in the health and wellness space with your IHP? And then we'll kind of back it up and talk a little bit about how you got here.
Okay, that sounds great. I became one of the team members at EquiLife in February after being at the conference last year and walking up to Dr. Cabral and saying, I'm going to work for you one day. He probably doesn't remember it, but it was a moment that changed my trajectory, because then there was no stopping. I was going to be a team member because I saw all the great work that you guys had done, and I wanted to be part of something that was much larger than myself, and EquiLife was the perfect fit for me. So I am one of the coaches, meet with clients one-on-one throughout the day, and we go through protocols and give them pieces of their puzzle that then, they're able to connect the dots sometimes and help them on their journey and become more balanced and more of their health. That's what we do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. See, so I had no idea that you were at the conference and you were in an IHP. Yeah, that's amazing. I wonder if he does remember. So cool. That's called the power of manifesting right there, right?
Exactly. The perfect example of where, science meets the woo, for sure.
Yes, which we're going to talk about because that's kind of your little niche specialty. What were you doing before you found IHP and you were health coaching, and obviously now working for EquiLife? What were you up to before that?
Well, I've been a nurse for forever, because everybody becomes a nurse because they want to help people. And that was what I did right out of high school, went and got my bachelor's and my public health degree, and then worked there for quite a while in that space. I worked at Abbott Northwestern in Minneapolis and was head of the spinal cord team. I love rehab, and then transitioned into managing 9 allergy clinics. Did first assist for general surgery, did home care, and then went to transitional care outpatient. So I kind of ran the whole gamut of nursing. But as you know, sometimes it just isn't enough. So I started looking at other things, and IHP came across after I had become a massage therapist and was looking into my own health and nutrition. Everybody has a story, and that's kind of how we get to this space. And so with being a nurse and a massage therapist, I was doing kind of what we do at EquiLife, but on a very smaller scale. In my own studio. I still do massage occasionally, evenings and weekends. So I am very, very busy, but my kids are much older. So I have a little bit more time and not running around with littles anymore. So we have that going for us. So that's kind of what I was doing before I came to EquiLife.
That's great. Yeah. And we have so many nurses that go through IHP where they just feel like, I do care about health. I do care about wellness. I want to help people, but there's something missing. And I feel like we're missing a mark, right? There's places where we're not optimizing, and it's usually at that root cause level, science too, right? But then there's the other stuff that kind of IHP touches upon, with the de-stress protocol, and where kind of mastery comes into play, which you teased a little bit at the beginning, where you said where the science meets the woo. And I would love for you to kind of touch upon what that means for you, and kind of how it's something that you feel like you're good at, because you are. And the science meeting the woo is, I think, a term probably that a lot of people, could understand what it means on their own. But there's probably some people that are like, what the heck are you talking about? So tell us a little bit about what that phrase means for you.
Yeah. For me as a coach, and I've always been very integrative. So you get a piece of a puzzle, but it doesn't show the overall picture. It's just a glimpse into a particular situation or, you know, place that you are. And I look at clients that they have all these different pieces and you put them into this beautiful puzzle that explains their story. And so sometimes it's more scientific based. You're running the labs, you're looking at what do the numbers say and quantitatively, seeing, oh, that makes sense. But other times there's also that piece where the numbers aren't showing what they're feeling, what they are displaying clinically. And so that's where I can step in. And I think that I bring a unique perspective because you can look at the emotional side of things and looking at big T or little t trauma. We all have it. And looking into energetic rebalancing and fields and things like that. So I take all of it into account and look at that person and maybe give them a glimpse into one of the pieces that they may not have looked at, that they may not even have recognized. And then we are able to see a little bit more of their picture and get them a little bit more on that journey that is specifically theirs. Because, sometimes in helping others, we want to help so bad, but it's not our journey. And, that's what I've realized is that when I went through all of these things and I had the labs and I saw the quantitative data, but it wasn't measuring up, I looked into more of, the alternative, the energetic type things, because God was really helping me and preparing me for my greatest challenge and my biggest success story. And I think that's where I am. And I bring that to the table with all of my clients. And if the clients aren't open to that, that's fine. We meet them where they're at and we're there to help them, assist them, and sometimes just walk alongside of them.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you kind of say, meeting them with where they're at. Some people just come into these meetings, wanting their lab numbers and they're very quantitative people. But then every now and then you get a client who, you're delivering their lab results and they just start crying out of nowhere because they're so relieved that something was finally found. And you find out that there's been years of them, being in conventional care, right? They share their story. There's clearly another depth, right, to those clients. And I love that with EquiLife, we kind of have this standard process of operating where like all of these things are the same, but then we get to be our own individual practitioner and bring our own set of skills and knowledge to the table. And we all have different toolbox, right? It's like all of my tools are different than yours and vice versa, right? And so one of the things in your toolbox is being able to energetically certainly pick up on things, but also being able to support someone. And I think based on, where they're at, right, might be determine what you're going to suggest or get kind of what you're going to bring up. But I think just the first step is actually being able to recognize that, right? Because a lot of people who think like, oh gosh, this kind of work is, really important and everybody should be doing, energy work. Well, not everybody's ready for that. And having a practitioner that's able to kind of gauge and see that and meet the client where they're at is really the beauty in it. I would love for you to kind of give a little bit of insight to our listeners about what is it that kind of what do you pick up on the most when, let's talk about like clients that you're like, this probably isn't part of their journey. And I'm just going to kind of keep it quantitative and, move forward. And sometimes that's just all they need, right? A lot of people that aren't super in touch with that stuff don't necessarily need it in that moment, right? So how do you kind of pick up on somebody that may not be maybe all science and no woo?
Yeah. And there are quite a few people. I coming from the medical background, I was definitely more like that until it didn't work. And that's when, we see a lot of people that were kind of like their last hope. They're like, I've tried everything and, Western medicine is saying that I'm fine. But there's something that isn't fine about me. And I get that. And so I listen to them, and I get on every call, and I will tell them, I'm like, I've read your intake. Thank you for filling that out. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your story? Because I love getting all of the pieces and then asking very specific questions to dig deeper into the pieces of the story that they give to me, and I am privileged enough to hear, and then ask more probing questions. And if they are just all about the science, then we stick with the science. We look at the numbers, and we look at the data, and we based protocols off of that. If they are, more energetically in tune or open to ideas, I will ask them, have you heard about tapping? Have you looked into the emotion code? And you can get a vibe from people if they are open to it, or if they are just hands out, stop, nope, not going to do that. And if they are open, then we broach that discussion as, I have found this very helpful. Here's some of the tools that I've used that have worked for past clients. Would you like me to share those with you? And then we kind of go from there.
Yes. Yeah. And I think for some clients too, right, we're privileged enough to see clients that, run one lab, and then they come back to us 3 months later with another lab, and they kind of just are always working on their wellness. And in 13 to 15 years or so, however long it's been for me, I've had clients who for 2 straight years, it's just been all science. And that's all we've done. And then it's kind of like, okay, we're hitting a little bit of a roadblock, and they acknowledge that there's got to be something else there. And then that's, when I can kind of bring in some of that energetic stuff. And that's honestly the only when it's going to be beneficial is when that client is ready for it, when they have kind of acknowledged that they feel like they're at a bit of a standstill. Because I think as much as you can be at a standstill with conventional medicine, sometimes you can get to a standstill with just using supplements, right? We know, and we talk all the time in our internal meetings about clients, that you can out-supplement a really stressful lifestyle for only so long, or you can out-supplement store trauma for only so long. And sometimes that is the last missing piece. And clients have to kind of experience, okay, I've done all these things, like maybe I do have to look there. And it can be a progression.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really nice that when you do see clients repeatedly, you get to know more of their story and more of what they are willing to do, what they're open to. And then when they do hit that roadblock, you can step up, alongside them and go, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Have you ever looked in this direction or that direction? And I think as health coaches, that's what's kind of the beautiful thing about what we do is we meet the client exactly where they're at, get what from them, what are their goals? Because it isn't what we want to do. It isn't what we want to optimize. Yeah, we have the protocols and the standards of care that can definitely assist them, but really they're in the driver's seat all the time. And that's the art about what we do that you so beautifully do all of the time and display to all of us on the team for sure, is how do you meet the client? How do you, construct that beautiful wellness plan that optimizes and helps them move forward? And just not in the rebalancing and the physical part, but in the emotional part, the psychological part, that just, it marries it all together.
Yes. Yeah. And I always say to clients, like, how does this feel? Like, are you up for this? Does this feel like a good plan? Because the plan, we could create these grand protocols and plans, right? But if the client is feeling too overwhelmed, right? Sometimes we need to pare it down and, the client having kind of a say in where we think everything should go, right? We're not the know all be all. And I always consult the client. Like, does this feel like a good plan? Do you think this is manageable? Is it overwhelming? Because the best plan is the one that someone's going to be able to execute. And I think when we kind of empower the client and hear them, they're much more successful moving forward with whatever is going to help them the most. And yes, always meeting them where they're at, because it can kind of feel, we have so many clients that come from the conventional space and they feel like they haven't been heard, right? But what happens if, we meet with a client and they're like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now. There's just so much going on. I can like only do so much. And then we give them this major, protocol to do. It may overwhelm them further, right? Or they may be totally up for it. But either way, being able to have an honest conversation with the client so that we can kind of, like you said, meet them where they're at is such an important part of the art, as you said.
Yeah. And with clients, I always tell them, I'm like, there's good, there's better, and there's best. You don't have to go right to best. And if for the overwhelmed client, that's like, I have 3 kids under the age of 5, and, there's just so much stress. We're not going to go into a big major protocol. Then I'm like, it's okay. Like, time out. If it means that you are drinking water throughout the day and you're not drinking anything right now, let's start there. And they're like, well, that's not enough. That's not going to get me results. And then they're surprised when you meet with them later on and they're like, I didn't believe that just drinking water was going to help me feel better. And you're just like, yeah, been there, done that. Haven't drank water, always caffeinated and dehydrated. And, then you give them those little wins and you're just like, if you're not drinking any water, can you at least drink 3 glasses of water a day? Well, that's not going to do anything. And then they're like, can you drink 5 glasses of water a day? Now, this is the recommendation that we'd like to have you aim for it, but we don't need to do it overnight. And so adding those super simple pieces in has been very helpful. And then as they start seeing the wins and the momentum builds, they're like, what more can I do? How can I optimize? And then they share with other people, which is the greatest thing. I love educating our clients, and that so that we, not that we're working ourselves out of a job, but they are empowered and then they help those around them. I wish that I could say all of my family and friends are, perfect picture of health, but they're not. And it's their journey. It's not mine. And I always have to step back. Being the type A and wanting to meddle and wanting everything to be perfect is like, oh, well, you didn't get here. How many years did it take me to get to where I am? And, major health scare and basically building from the ground up, which is why I'm so passionate about Dr. Cabral and his vision, is because when I was at the lowest of the low and physically I was wiped, it was his protocols. It was meeting with you guys, the coaches, that built me up. And I was able to then be the best version of me. And I love that with our clients, is that we are providing them the tools for them to be the best version of them.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And when you just said I was at the, lowest version of me and the protocols helped, it's also probably important to say that sometimes we need a little tough love too, right? So there's, yes, meeting the clients where they're at, but also there's times where clients do need some of these really life-changing protocols. And if it is overwhelming, we can be the ones to kind of say, okay, like you can do this. This is probably going to make a difference in how you feel. So let's take it step by step. And I'm here to help, right? So that you can kind of create less of an overwhelming understanding of it all for somebody who might not be so health and wellness minded, but really does need it. That's another role that we have that's, I think, so important.
And accountability is paramount. Is I can't do it for you, nor do you want me to do it for you. So then that's where the tough love comes in. Is like, yep, I get that this is hard. It is hard when, you don't want to not stop eating all of the processed foods and the quick, grab and go. And yeah, it is hard until it becomes your norm. And then it becomes a lot easier. And so I'm always like, trust me. Just, if in 6 weeks when we meet again and you think that I need to jump off, a cliff, then you can tell me that. But give me 6 weeks. Yep. And they'll come back and be like, okay, I don't want you to jump off a cliff. You could probably, jump over the curb if you'd like, but I did it. And I'm like, see, I knew you could do it. What's the next thing? And if at that point they're just like, this is all I can handle, then we continue with that. And just not that you always have to up level, because sometimes all of the biohacking stuff is great. I am like the biggest junkie for all of the biohacking stuff, but it does create a lot more stress. And so sometimes I even have to talk myself off the ledge and say, put the HRV away. It doesn't matter what your number is. What are you feeling? And that's where then we get into really the woo is, are you breathing? Are you centered in your being? Are you doing the simple things that help you be the best you, optimize, and, be the creation that you were made to be? So it's, as much as those are great tools, they are just tools, and sometimes they can hinder the greater picture.
Yes, yes. I always ask clients, like, what do you typically do with data? Does data overwhelm you? Does data motivate you? Are you able to look at data in kind of this like objective way and observe and, well, that's interesting, and I think I can do better? Or is it something that usually like you stress about and you overthink about? Because sometimes those clients, I'm like, okay, I don't think we actually need an Oura ring. I think we just need to get you out of sympathetic nervous system dominance for now. And then we can kind of check and see what we're getting for deep and REM sleep. But for some people, it's a motivator. It was no different than some of my clients when I was personal training, and some would want to weigh in all the time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we don't need to get on the scale every single day. And they're like, it honestly just, it doesn't discourage me. It makes me feel like it's just part of my rhythm. And I could truly, when someone told me, trust, like, yes, that's true. And then some people would be like, no, I just need to, like, I always have, and I need to get on the scale. And I'm like, oh, okay, no, you don't. We're actually not going to get on the scale every day. You can do it once a week, but not every day. Right. So I think when you are, as a practitioner, also in tune to energy and you understand how it works, you're able to kind of pick up on things that a client might otherwise try to convince you out of, which it sounds like you're incredibly good at.
Yeah. And when we have the video calls, I can probably tell before they even finish the first sentence where this is probably going to be, what kind of type of person it is. And then I am able to serve them best based on their needs. And so it is very interesting. And the more that we do it, the more you get adept, and very proficient at it. And so it is nice that there is the video call, because you can, actually see somebody. With energy, it can also be in, a phone call, or just, it's quantum physics. We're all made up of, energy, and we're energetic beings. But it is very fun to see after you get off the call, and you'll be like, yeah, I nailed that, or you're like totally wrong. You're like, well, that was from left field. What can I learn from that? Where did I go wrong? Because it's always a constant evolution. You're never going to know enough. You're never going to feel like, you're good enough, or, there's always something else as far as up leveling, but knowing that that's what makes us a great coach, is because we are in the center is that client, and bringing whatever it is to the table, whether it's the science, whether it's the knowledge, whether it's the woo, whether it's the energy. It's all because the client is in the center, and in the best interest of the client, which is why I love what I do.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I think probably a lot of people listening, we can all agree on the science, which is, labs and data and all of that, and an intake. What are your kind of like favorite 2 or 3 like woos, if you will, things that you kind of like to touch upon in that category with a client who you're like, yeah, they're totally like in on this, ready for it. What are some of your favorites kind of speaking in that?
My favorites, and this is kind of where you're getting like grounding. That is like the number one, whether it's on the biomat, whether it's walking out in, your backyard on the grass. Grounding is just so incredibly important, because we are so disconnected from our own intuitiveness, which I find. And whether that is going for a walk, or sitting in the sauna, or just being still, is really uncomfortable for some people, myself included. But I can see that I focus better. I'm a better mom, friend, wife. When I take those 5 minutes, take a deep breath and make sure that I am grounded within my body. And what am I feeling? It doesn't mean that everything's, roses and sunshine and rainbows and unicorns, and glitter, because you always need glitter. But
especially if there's unicorns, there has to be glitter. So.
Exactly. But knowing that I'm grounded and that I'm present, and I noticed that, my right wrist is a little wonky, or I have a slight headache. Okay, great. Acknowledging that. So that the grounding is like my number one thing. Recently, I have gotten into tapping. So that has been kind of a game changer, that it's super simple and you don't need any special tools. You can, walk down the grocery aisle if you want to, and tapping based on what is it that you're feeling. Are you overwhelmed? Are you anxious? Are you worried? Are you sad? You still feel those emotions, which is fine. It's kind of like, going on the bear hunt, that little children's book. You can't go around it. You can't go over it. You have to go through it. So it's definitely, you still have to go through it, but you are energetically vibrating at a higher vibrational energy and able to handle that well. So kind of, the rain bucket, the rain barrel, like Dr. Karow talks about, you have a little bit more give. You are a little bit more resilient. So that is two of my favorite. And then I love the emotion code. So I do emotion code on a lot of my massage clients and my family too. So that is whether you're finding a practitioner or, getting the emotion code book, or looking online, that has really been very beneficial for a lot of the clients that I work for. And so those are probably my top 3 woo.
I love that. And tapping, for those that don't know, it's and if you're watching, obviously you can see what I'm doing, but it is actually literally tapping somewhere on your body. And is it affirmations along with it? I looked into it actually for one of my kids who can just kind of like get in his head. And so I don't know if it was kid specific when I kind of learned about it. But I'm curious, what do you?
It can be kid specific. And on the last office call or office hours, I have the stress module, and we talked about the tapping and with, what kind of tools can we give the kids that don't necessarily want to take supplements or do all these things. And the tapping solution has a kid specific section. So you can have kids tap it because it's super simple. You do the karate chop above the eyebrows, next to the eyes, under the nose, under the chin, the collarbone, under the arm, and then on top of the head. You can do it with affirmations. You can do it with a specific guided lead type of things that are already pre-recorded. And sometimes when I have been so wound up, I don't even know what to say. It doesn't really matter what you say. That isn't the magic that it is. And sometimes I'll just tap through the points and I feel better. I'm like, I don't have the words. And so I tap through them, or I will tap through the emotion. I'm having so much anxiety, all of this anxiety. I need to just release the anxiety. And then when I go through do it 3 or 4 times, on the last time, I will fill it with Bible verses or affirmations, things that release the negative energy, because negative energy is a lower vibrational frequency, trying to up my frequency level. And so then I will fill it with the positive, because we don't want all of the negative. So then I bring in the unicorns, the glitter, and all of the funness on the last time that I go through.
And I love that because it's something that can be taught virtually. It doesn't have to be, like you said, you don't have to have any crazy equipment to do it. You can do it anywhere. You don't need to be lying down. You can be in the car. It's kind of incredibly versatile in that sense. It's not only for a certain population. And
Mhm.
I think it's one of those things too, where kids, it's much like exercise. It's actually much like everything. I have, conversations with my husband all the time about they're never going to do what we say unless they see us doing what they're asking us to do. I remember my son was working with a reading tutor and she said, "Do you read?" I said, "Books?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Oh, no." And she said, "Okay." She said, "It's going to be hard for him to fall in love with reading if he doesn't see anybody reading books." And I never thought of that. This was when we were homeschooling. So he wasn't in school. He wasn't immersed in a classroom where there was a library. Everybody was reading and we weren't reading at home. Um, Everything that I do for education wise is usually on my laptop or on my phone.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, you're right. So I got a book that I normally would have listened to on Audible and
Oh,
I started reading. And like the next thing I knew, I never said, like, "Do you want to come read with me?" But he started like, "Can I read too? Oh, are you going to lie in bed and read? Can I get my book and come read too?" And he wasn't actually reading. He was just pretending.
yeah.
Just got him, and tapping is no different, right? I thought to myself, I got to teach him how to tap. And then I was like, no, I have to teach myself how to tap and I'm going to tap. Maybe he'll ask me what I'm doing. But where we all kind of can use some level of support that doesn't feel like it's too hard of work. It's not an extra thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just something that we can, enact for support. And tapping sounds like it's one of those perfect little things for coaches to be teaching their clients.
Yeah, and leading by example. I mean, like you saw with your son, the same thing has happened with my kids. Is before, they're just like, "Oh my gosh, here we go. Mom's working her woo-woo magic." And now when there is, an injury or they're getting sick, they're like, "Mom, where's the red light? Mom, where's your dirt and rocks?" That's what they call it. "Well, we need some dirt and rocks." I'm like, "Supplements?" They're like, "Yeah, that stuff that always tastes bad." I'm like, "It doesn't always taste bad, but so they're starting to incorporate those things, which ultimately started, with us showing them that it is something that is another availability to them.
Yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I love that dirt and rocks. That's hilarious.
Rocks and dirt. "Mom, we need your rocks and dirt." I'm like, "Oh, not feeling good, are you?"
How old are your kids?
17 and 19. So they're on the other end of yours. But
But that's good
definitely a
because
journey.
sometimes that can be even harder ages to where they're like, "We're not going to listen to anything you say." So just the fact that they're asking for rocks and dirts, they have to kind of make it, they have to give you a little dig while they're asking, asking for the stuff that they know it's going to work. Um,
Yeah. And they are why I got into this, in the first place, is because my son has been diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And when nothing else worked, I was like, this isn't an acceptable answer as a mom. Is I'm not trying to fix him, but I need to optimize what it is that he is capable of. And he was obviously created as this wonderful human being, but we're not giving him all of the tools or the chance that his potential is. So I got into the nutrition and the rocks and the dirt and the woo and, the unicorns and all of that. And he has put up plenty of roadblocks, but he is, his own adult version now. And he does start incorporate, some of these things that we started 10, 15 years ago. And you just have to, pray and hope that you're giving your kids the best opportunities and putting them in the best place that they can be. And for me, that was the science. And when the science didn't fail, it didn't provide enough direction. We went into the woo, and everything that I do now at EquiLife is really kind of a culmination of the journey that's brought me to this place and made me uniquely me. And, we all have our story, which is so important. And I think that's the beauty of what we bring to our clients, whether it's the science, whether it's the woo, it all is definitely worthwhile.
Yes. Yeah. I could not agree more. Such a beautiful story. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Yes.
And actually, I didn't ask if do you show up on social media anywhere. We usually ask that. A lot of EquiLife coaches don't have social media because we tend to be so busy. But anywhere that you show up besides EquiLife, where you share all your science and your woo.
Yeah, I have Instagram is Tonya Karow at wellness. And that is, I don't go on a ton because, we're meeting with clients and life is kind of crazy. Also on Facebook, and I don't even know what my handle is. Isn't that awful? Oh my gosh.
Oh, it might just be your name.
It might be my name. And so I pop in there every once in a while, but I'm also on the office calls or the office hours with IHPs. So the stress module, that is all about me. And you get a lot of woo along with the science.
Yes, of course. Oh, thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. This was such a pleasure for me. I'm sure our listeners enjoyed it just as much as I did. I thank you for being here.
Thank you, Julia. It was great. And I just am excited to see what the future holds for both of us.
Yes, same here. Talk soon, Tonya.
Okay, take care. Bye.